Hi everyone, welcome to your online webinar on using multiple intelligence theory. Before we get started, I just want to thank all of you teachers for taking the time to watch this. I know December is a really busy time for everyone, especially teachers as you're finishing up the semester. So I really appreciate you taking the time to see this. So let's jump on in. So first we're going to discuss what is the theory of multiple intelligences. Some of you may be familiar with the multiple intelligence theory. Maybe you read about it in college, maybe you've read about it in a blog, or you're familiar with it from another PD that you had. So we're just going to do a quick refresher on the theory of multiple intelligences was first developed by Howard Gardner. He was an education professor at Harvard, and he first developed his theory in 1983. The idea behind his theory is that intelligence is not something that people either have or they don't have. Instead, there's different kinds of intelligences and different ways of being so-called smart. People can vary in strengths in their intelligences. For example, one person may be really strong in one intelligence and really weak in another intelligence. He originally named 7 intelligences, which will be discussed later in detail. However, in his original work, he did not put a limit on the number of intelligences that can be used. And more recently, other intelligences have been added to his previous 7. Those include the naturalistic intelligence, which will be discussed later, and even more recently, the existential intelligence was added. Now we're going to discuss what the actual 8 intelligences are. If you're interested in applying this theory in your classroom, you really need to understand what the different intelligences are so you can apply different strategies and different learning styles in your classroom. You may notice at the top of the slide, I have a link to a video. This is a really good, concise video that explains the different intelligences. If you're unfamiliar with this theory, I would definitely recommend that you watch the video in addition to listening to the next few slides. You can see that I have created a table. The table shows the intelligence. It shows strengths that are often exhibited by children that have this intelligence and some classroom tasks. These classroom tasks can be ideas for independent practice, guided practice, and even assessments. The first intelligence listed is linguistic. Students that have a strong linguistic intelligence are really good at understanding and remembering written and spoken words. They are good at giving oral presentations, they're good at storytelling, they're good at composing their own sentences. Students that have a logical mathematical intelligence tend to notice patterns. They're really good at solving problems. They can perform basic math computation. They're good at counting. They enjoy using puzzles and solving puzzles. A musical intelligence, it includes students that can recognize pitch, they can identify rhythm, they can clap along to the rhythm of songs, they can move their feet to the rhythm of songs, and they have an appreciation for sounds and music. Classroom tasks for students that have a strong musical intelligence include singing, humming, clapping rhythms, and even making their own songs. Students that have a bodily kinesthetic intelligence have a big strength in using eye and body coordination. As we know, young students are still developing gross motor skills and fine motor skills, so students that have a bodily kinesthetic intelligence are able to control their bodies, they're able to make gross motor movements, they're able to display balance. Classroom tasks for students that have a strong bodily kinesthetic intelligence include dancing, playing games, and performing dramatic play. The next intelligence is the spatial intelligence. Students that have a strength in this intelligence have really vivid imagination. They are creative and they can apply these skills to drawings and paintings. They are also very observant of visual images. They may have already started to exhibit that they have a visual memory. Classroom tasks for spatial intelligence students include drawing, painting, clay sculpting, and interpreting pictures. The interpersonal intelligence is an intelligence that has to deal with the student and how they behave with other people. Students that have this intelligence demonstrate empathy, and they're really observant of others' behavior, and they often comment on what others are doing and how others are feeling. Students that have this intelligence would make really good peer helpers. They would make really good helpers for other teachers, and they really excel in group work. And intrapersonal intelligence is kind of the opposite of interpersonal. This intelligence is the connection that a student has with themselves. Students that have this intelligence have really good self-awareness, and they're good at expressing their feelings. Classroom tasks for an intrapersonal student would be journaling. They could be writing about their day, how they feel, what they learned, what they're looking forward to. They are also really good at giving themselves self-assessment, and they're also really good at giving I messages and using that strategy to explain how they're feeling. Lastly, a naturalistic intelligence is someone who has strengths in animals, plants, weather, and they understand connections between living and non-living things. Classroom tasks for naturalistic intelligence students would be including nature units in your curriculum. It would also include having some outdoor activities for students. As I mentioned before, the naturalistic intelligence was added more recently than the other 7 intelligences. Okay, so now you know about the different 8 intelligences. You know a little bit about where the theory originated. So now you're probably asking yourself, why should I use this theory? I'm given lots of tools, lots of curriculum, lots of learning theories. Why is this one important, and why should I use this in my classroom? That is what we're going to discuss next. I challenge you now to think about the last lesson that you taught. Think about what methods did you use to deliver the information? What activities did the children complete? Did they have to turn in any independent work? Go ahead, think about it. You can even pause the video. I'll wait. Now, I want you to think, what intelligences were your students required to use? Most schools cater to only 3 of the intelligences. Those intelligences are mostly the logical, mathematical, linguistic, and some spatial intelligence. Think about it. In order to be academically successful, the main content areas that students need to know are math and English language arts. They need to be able to read, write, spell. They need to be able to perform math computations, solve word problems. This is only using not even half of the intelligences that exist. What happens to the students that are weak in logical, mathematical, or linguistic intelligence? They will continue to fall behind, they will continue to be unsuccessful, and they may develop negative feelings towards school. As a solution, I suggest that teachers look at the other intelligences and think of ways to incorporate these intelligences into their lessons to cater better to the diverse learning styles of their students. If teachers are able to use all of the intelligences in their lessons as ways to deliver instruction, as guided practice opportunities, independent practice opportunities, and assessments, students will get a more well-rounded education, and they will hopefully be more engaged in their learning, and they will develop more positive feelings in their classroom. Hopefully at this point, you're starting to think that Howard Gardner's theory has some valid points. And maybe you're starting to think, okay, where do I begin? How can I implement this theory? Well, that is what we are going to discuss next. The first step in implementing this theory is assessment. And this is a very important step. Before you can start altering your lessons to cater different learning styles, you need to figure out which intelligences are most prevalent in your classroom. Now, this is a tricky subject because Howard Gardner himself did not create an assessment that early childhood educators can use. The main challenge with this is that there cannot be one standardized test because standardized tests tend to only cater to one or two of the intelligences. Therefore, Howard Gardner suggested that students use culturally valued tasks in order to assess their strengths. So I have done some research and I've come up with 2 ways for teachers to assess their students' multiple intelligences. The first is classroom performance tasks. These tasks are a series of 7 research-based tasks that will assess students' strengths in each of the intelligences. Now, these tasks come from 2 different projects by researchers. The first is by University of Arizona professors Nielsen and Rogers in their 1994 Discover project. The second researcher is from Howard Gardner himself when he delivered Project Spectrum in 1998. So I have read about these projects and I've taken that information to develop 7 tasks that teachers can use. The second part of the assessment process is a parent survey. As we know, parents and families are a very valuable source for teachers. They know the children better than anyone, and this is especially useful if you're planning on implementing the theory in the beginning of the school year. So I've created a survey for you to send home for parents to answer 24 questions about their children, and they can even complete this survey with their children as well. Another advantage to having a parent survey is that early childhood children are not able to accurately read a series of sentences and accurately give an answer on whether or not it describes them entirely. So by using parents, it also gives another perspective on their intelligences. Next, we're going to review the different classroom tasks that teachers should deliver to their students. The first task assesses the spatial intelligence. In this task, students are given different pieces of cardboard or other thick paper that's been cut into different shapes and colors. Students then use the pieces of paper to create a picture of their choice. Teachers score based on the complexity of the picture, the number of pieces used, and the closeness of the creation to what the students are attempting to make. So for example, if students are trying to make a car, does it actually look like a car or does it have no resemblance at all? The next task assesses the logical mathematical intelligence through the use of tangrams. For those of you that are unfamiliar, I have a picture of tangrams. They're these little foam or plastic, different colored shapes, and they're often in different sizes. So in this task, students are given a bag with at least 21 tangrams. Then they are asked to count the number of tangrams in the bag. So this is assessing students' counting and one-to-one correspondence ability. Then the teachers will put 4 tangrams in a separate bag and ask the student to make a bag with more tangrams and then a bag with less tangrams. Teachers score based on the student's counting ability and the level of difficulty students showed. So did this task seem easy for students or did it seem really, really difficult and were they unable to complete it? The next classroom task addresses 2 intelligences, the spatial and logical mathematical intelligence. In this task, students are using tangrams once again. They are given different tangram pieces and then asked to create a square using as many pieces as they can. Now, if you're unsure what that would look like, I included a picture as an example. In this, teachers will score based on the number of pieces students used and whether or not their creation resembled a square. This classroom task addresses the linguistic intelligence through storytelling. Students are given a variety of toys such as people, animals, furniture, cars, or other regular daily objects. Students are then asked to tell a story using the toys. Teachers will score based on plot. Is there a beginning, middle, and end? Does the story make sense? Is there characters? Is there dialogue? And does the story include unique ideas? The next classroom task assesses the naturalistic intelligence through a discovery area. Students are given a variety of natural objects such as rocks, sticks, leaves, flowers, etc. Students are then asked to group the objects based on similarities that they observe. So they can group the objects according to size, according to color, according to texture, maybe even according to where the objects come from. Teachers will score based on the type of classification students make, so what type of categories did they make, and any demonstration of prior knowledge that they had of the objects, or any level of curiosity students had with the different objects. This task assesses the bodily kinesthetic intelligence through Simon Says. In this assessment, students are asked to complete a variety of movements, such as moving parts at the same time. So for example, Simon says, lift your arm and your leg. And it includes moving parts in isolation, such as Simon says, move your head. At the end of the game, students are asked to complete a free dance, where they're able to freestyle any movement that they want. Teachers score this assessment based on students' body control, their balance, and their range of movement during the free dance. And it's also important to note that this is an assessment that can be given to multiple students at the same time, as long as there are enough observers for each student. The last classroom task assesses the musical intelligence through singing. In this task, the teacher will play a song for the student. Then the student is asked to clap along to the rhythm of the song. And then after listening to the song, the student is asked to sing along to the chorus. The teachers will score based on accuracy of pitch while they're singing, whether or not they are able to accurately clap along to the rhythm of the song, and teachers are also looking for the student's level of engagement during this assessment. You may have noticed that we only addressed 6 of the intelligences, and you might be asking yourself, wait, what about the interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligences? Well, the reason for this is that neither the Discover or Project Spectrum performance assessments address either of these intelligences. However, teachers can make observations of students as they complete the tasks. So for an interpersonal intelligence, teachers may be looking for how students react to their peers completing the task. Are they appearing competitive with others? Are they trying to help others and explain to others what they're trying to do? Or for an intrapersonal intelligence, teachers may be looking if students are talking to themselves, if they appear to be calming themselves down, if they're frustrated, or do they appear to be really thoughtful in the task before they complete any actions. So even though there is not a specific classroom task for each of these intelligences, teachers can use their observations to get an idea of students' strengths in these areas. I have created a recording form for teachers to use as they carry out these classroom performance tasks with their students. If you click on the link, you'll be able to download it, and in the form you will see each of the classroom tasks that I described in the previous slides, as well as criteria that you should look for when students are completing the task. If you're unable to download it for some reason through YouTube, you can always email me at lk393@nau.edu for a copy, and I would be happy to send it to you. The second part of the assessment process is the parent survey. I believe that by combining the results from the classroom performance tasks and looking at the results from the parent survey, teachers will be able to combine the two sources and get a pretty accurate depiction of the intelligences of their students. So on this slide, the first link is an editable letter for you to send home. In the letter, it briefly describes the theory and what you're asking parents to do. The second link is the actual survey that parents will complete. It's not very long, it's 24 questions, and it consists of short sentences, and parents are asked to mark whether these sentences describe their children or not. And again, if you have trouble downloading the documents through YouTube, you can always email me at lk393@nau.edu for a copy. As I mentioned before, the assessment is such a crucial step in implementing this theory. So let's say you've done the classroom performance tasks for all your students. You've sent home the parent surveys. You got most, hopefully all of them back. What are the next steps? Next, you need to evaluate your results. You need to determine the strongest intelligences for each student as well as the weakest intelligences for each student. Then compare your results among your entire class. Are there 3 or 4 intelligences that are really prevalent in your classroom, or a couple of intelligences that hardly anyone has? My recommendation is that teachers look at the intelligences that are most prevalent in their classroom. Another strategy you might want to use is to specifically look at those struggling, low-performing students and really focus on the intelligences that they are really strong in when you're doing your instructional planning. Now that you have evaluated your results and you are confident in which intelligences your students have, now is the time to adapt your lessons. Use the results and the information you gained from the survey and the classroom tasks to guide your instructional practices. Think of learning centers that you can use that cater to the different intelligences. Think of different ways you can deliver the core content curriculum. Think about independent practice opportunities and assessment opportunities that are not just paper and pencil or linguistic intelligence driven. Think of different ways that you can tap into the different intelligences to best meet your students' needs. Now, I know that this sounds like a lot of work. Teachers are not in excess of time. They do not have all the planning time that they wish. But this is what is going to help your students. This is what is going to help you meet their diverse needs and their different learning styles. It is going to be a lot of work, but it will make school more engaging and more effective for your students. Thank you so much for your participation in this webinar. The purpose of this webinar was for teachers who are interested in applying Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, but maybe you do not have the tools or resources to get you started. So hopefully you got some good information about the assessments that you can use, and you're able to download those resources to your computer so you can actually begin applying the theory in your classroom. I ask that you please complete the survey that I have linked on this slide to let me know how I did, to let me know if there's any information that you found especially useful or if you have any suggestions for the future. Thank you so much. Happy holidays.